How does the manuscripts we have of the Bible, the New Testament Bible, how does that compare to the manuscripts we have of other ancient works and other ancient writings? Well, I'm glad that you asked, because let's compare those manuscripts compared to other ancient manuscripts. Look at this. The only things, the second Greek document that we have behind the Bible is the works of Homer, right? Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey, right? We only have 1,800 copies of Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey. That's number second. The New Testament far exceeds any other Greek New Testament we have of anything else from the ancient world. And like, for example, I don't even know how to say that guy's second. Demosthenes, 200. Tacitus, we referred to Tacitus last session. Caesar salad. All right. Caesar was an emperor, ruled the world, a Roman emperor. We only have 10 manuscripts that he wrote. Plato, we all know who Plato is. If you went to college, you studied Plato. Every university teaches Plato because he's one of the most brilliant minds that's ever lived. We only have 7 surviving manuscripts. The New Testament far exceeds anything we have in Greek in the ancient world. Right? In fact, they're in the PDF. We won't take time to look at this, but in the PDF, if you want to take time to look at this, some other guys did a lot more of a scientific breakdown on it than I did. But you see the red circle represents the New Testament versus the yellow circles represent these other ones. But what about the time gap? Because that's something we hear a lot. What about the time gap between? Because the Bible was written hundreds of years after the things that actually not true. The Bible wasn't written hundreds of years. What's the time gap between the original and first surviving copies? Right? The New Testament. Now, I'll give it to you. That number 25 years, that's probably a conservative number. I'll give it to you. All right? The more accepted, probably the more liberal view, the more view would be about 40 to 60 years. Right? We have that space there. But that comes because of something called P52. Which was a manuscript discovered, a little credit card-sized manuscript that they dated as possibly as early as the 90s, but definitely in the early 100s, right? And so that's where that number 25 comes from. But anyway, we'll give you that. That's, it could be later than that. But anyway, but look at the one that's number 2. Homer, same guy we talked about earlier. We have 400-year time gap. Pliny, we referred to Pliny last session. 750 years. Tacitus, 1,000 years. Caesar, 1,000 years. Plato, 1,200. Herodias, 1,400 years. These are the people who wrote down things of why we know what happened in the ancient world. And so if you're calling into question the Bible because of a time gap, you have to call into question everything else that's ever happened in the ancient world. Right? In fact, there's another chart here. Same thing, we won't break it down, but it's there for you in the PDF. You want to take some time and kind of look at that yourself. Very interesting, a lot more scientific. The early Christians, the generation that came after the time of the apostles, when the apostles all died, the Christians that came after them, they liked to write. They did not have the gift of brevity. In fact, many of them wrote entire commentaries, like Origen, one of these guys up here, he wrote entire commentaries on the Bible. So we have tons of writing from early Christian writers. But what's amazing is they quoted the Bible so many times. The early church fathers quoted the New Testament some 36,289 times, which basically equates to 1 million verse citations of the New Testament. That's a lot of citations. That's a lot of times they're referencing these verses. And so what we have is literally the New Testament replicated many times over. And believe it or not, if the Bible just vanished and disappeared today, we'd had no Bible anymore. We could replicate and piece together almost the entire New Testament back together just from reading their quotations of the New Testament. In fact, many times over. In fact, one place I read, it said it's up to 95% of the New Testament could be pieced back together. Another place I said all but 11 verses of the New Testament could be put back together. What an incredible testament to the way these early Christians viewed and handled and valued and referenced the Word of God. So we have their writings. But not only that, we have the reach of the Bible. Okay? Think about this. They're sending out all of these copies of the Bible all over the entire known world at the time. in what we refer to kind of the Mediterranean area. You've got northern Africa, you've got Turkey, and you've got the Middle Eastern part of the Middle Eastern, and then you've got southern Europe there, right? This area, the whole Mediterranean area here. The Bible went out to the whole known world. All of these places went out all over here. In fact, it went out so many vast places that what we have now is that when they discover a text in a certain area, they can trace it back to a text family, meaning it was a text that was at some point was a family tree of texts that went off into this part of the world and this part of the world and this part of the world. Well, the ones in northern Africa are referred to Alexandrian. The one in the Turkey and Greece area are known as Byzantine, and then over there in Rome and in France area, those are referred to as Western. There's a lot of time we could spend on those. But the main point I want you to take away is that what this tells us is that no single person, no people group, no pope, no king, nobody ever had complete control over the Bible and over these manuscripts. These manuscripts went everywhere, and there was no possible way anybody could go out and round them up. So what that brings us to is many people say that there was a conspiracy to change the Bible. The Pope changed the Bible. The Council of Nicaea changed the Bible. Right? The Emperor changed the Bible. Okay, well let's kind of follow this logic. Let's follow this. What would it take if I had a conspiracy to change the Bible? What would it take to do that? If I wanted to change the Bible, I'd have to track down 5,800 Greek manuscripts and make all the changes I wanted to make in those manuscripts. But I couldn't stop there. I'd have to go over to the 20,000 other manuscripts in the other languages and make all the changes I wanted to make in those manuscripts. But I couldn't stop there. I'd have to go find all the writings of the early church fathers, track down all of their quotations and references, and make all the changes I wanted to make in those changes. But not only would I have to do that, I'd have to go out and do it throughout the entire world and trace it down in every country. Now, that takes a lot of faith to believe that. You're telling me somebody went and did that, and they changed who Jesus was? They made Jesus a God, and they didn't actually believe he was a God. They made up this theology, they made up this religion, and they changed it all to match and to be cohesive in all of this? It takes less faith to believe the Bible that we have is trustworthy than to believe that. Here's the thing. If you can't believe that the Bible has been preserved for us through time, if you can't believe the Bible is trustworthy, what you also have to believe is that you can't believe anything about anything that ever happened in the ancient world. Because there is more evidence, there is more manuscripts, there's more of this cohesiveness that we have concerning the text of the New Testament than for anything else in the ancient world. That means you can't even believe Assyria, the kingdom of Assyria existed. You can't believe the Babylonians existed. You can't believe the Persians existed. You can't believe the Greeks existed. You can't believe the Romans existed. You can't believe any of them existed if you don't believe the Bible. Because there's more evidence for the Bible than any of that.